What is up, everybody? It is JT Sports. I am back to you guys with another training camp preview. Today, I have my guy Fozzie Sports on to talk Chicago Bears training camp. What's going on, man?
What's good? What's good? Happy to be on, man.
So, before we begin, let people know where they can find you at and what you have coming up on the channel over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. You can follow me on my social media at faizsportstalk on Twitter, on Instagram, but obviously YouTube is the best spot to find me. Faizsportstalk. That's FAIZ Sports Talk, no space. And yeah, man, that's the place to find me. So reach out, ask questions, do what you got to do.
And make sure to subscribe to my guy Fozzie Sports Talk. I will have the link to his YouTube channel in the pinned comment section down below. So, first thing we gotta talk about is this whole quarterback battle. So, like, is Matt Nagy really pulling our legs? Like, do they really plan to trot out Andy Dalton week one, or is he just trying to use this to motivate Justin Fields?
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I really do think they're serious about starting Andy Dalton. And the reason is, I get it, a lot of Bears fans are all obviously not happy with that either. The reason is, I believe there's one key reason, and that's that Justin Fields is the crown jewel for Nagy and Pace. And he is what's going to let them have job security. So think about it like this, right? Real quick. If you don't start Justin Fields this entire season, and let's say the Bears are awful, then Nagy and Pace can still go back to management if they decide they want to move on from them to say, we haven't even played Justin Fields yet. Just wait till we play him. So it's like, oh, okay, we haven't played Justin Fields yet. Fine, I'll give you one more year. And he's for sure going to start next year then. So it buys them time. So I feel like they paid Andy Dalton $10 million. They're like, okay, let's start him out there, even though they know, I think everybody knows Justin Fields is a better quarterback. But it's just, it's buying time for Nagy and Pace. So I do think we see that just Andy Dalton starts, but I do think it won't be that long.
Yeah, so like, are they going to end up playing Andy Dalton for the whole entire season, you think? Or are they going to end up inserting Justin Fields? Because, like, that makes perfect sense. So, like, okay, what if they start Justin Fields week 10 and they still don't do very well? Like, you think that excuse could still hold valid? Like, okay, give us a whole season with Justin Fields.
I think if it's up to Matt Nagy, he sits Justin Fields the entire year. I think he wants to sit him the entire season. I think he wants to do what Patrick Mahomes did behind Alex Smith and, what Aaron Rodgers did, but that was obviously multiple years behind Brett Favre. But as far as when he would start, like I said, if it's up to Nagy, he'd sit him the entire season. But I don't think that's going to happen. What's going to happen pretty much is Andy Dalton is going to go up against tough teams, tough D lines like the Rams in week one, and then we'll see him turn into Andy Dalton and do what he does and unravel. And Bears fans are very tough. They're going to start calling for Justin Fields' name the second we see a pick from Andy Dalton or anything like that. So I'm going to say, Andy will probably get like a quarter of the season for sure, maybe a half, but I do think it'll be sooner rather than later.
You look at the offensive line, you guys have a big concern there when it comes to the offensive line. You lost Charles Leno. You bring in Tevin Jenkins in the second round of this past year's draft, a guy who should have went in the first round. He went viral due to that Brett Coleman video, the most violent man or the most dangerous man in college football. But outside of him, like, how is the offensive line looking like? What are some position battles that we could be watching fold out in training camp?
Yeah, that's a good point. The O-line, actually, I just made a video about this the other day. The O-line is the X factor for the Bears, right? You want to talk about, obviously, the quarterback position is the most important, but if we're assuming Dalton starts and Fields has to sit, then we know what we're getting from Andy Dalton, but we really don't know what we're getting from the offensive line. Last year, they weren't very good. It's been average, but they did upgrade it. Like you mentioned, we drafted Tevin Jenkins, drafted another offensive lineman, Larry Borum, I believe, in the 5th round. As far as positional battles, look, we have starters locked in multiple positions. I think Jenkins is for sure starting. You got Cody Whitehair. Sam Musfer has been great. You got James Daniels, right? The weakness, I think, is that right tackle spot with Jermaine Afidi. And if the rookie can beat him out, Larry Borum, maybe that's a spot right there. I think that's up for grabs. I think he only has that hold because he's a veteran. But I feel good about the O-line, man. I'm telling you, I think the offensive line has a chance to be a top 10, 15 unit if they really gel. And I'm saying stay healthy, right? Last year we lost James Daniels. We had some injuries. If they are able to stay healthy, I feel good about the offensive line because we added talent through the draft, and that obviously you can't underestimate. And we're getting guys back.
Another position I'm really interested in seeing is the tight end position because you guys had like a bunch of them on your roster last year. You got old man Jimmy Graham, you got Cole
Yep.
Kmet. Will we see Cole Kmet finally end up being that tight end one? Will he end up winning that spot in training camp, or is it still going to be, tight end by committee?
Yes, we will see Cole Kmet. This is one of my bold predictions, so I'm giving it exclusive to you on your show, which is I believe Cole Kmet is the breakout player to watch for. This might be a bit of a fantasy football plug, but I like Cole Kmet a lot because the Bears invested a lot in him. You're talking about a second-round pick last year, right? And coming into this season, yes, we drafted a receiver in Daz Newsome. We've got other guys there. Darnell Mooney obviously had a breakout season last year, but the tight end spot, there's not a lot of tight ends on the roster anymore. You can't use that joke anymore with the Bears where we have 7 tight ends. It's Jimmy Graham, it's Cole Kmet, and a bunch of practice squad guys. So I believe what happens this year is the Bears know Jimmy Graham's not their future. The Bears know they're most likely not going to be a contending team. They're going to give Cole Kmet all the playing time he wants. Andy Dalton, if he is the starter, will check down repeatedly, look for a middle of the field. So I think we see Cole Kmet really catch a lot of balls this year. I think he breaks out. He's a sleeper for me in fantasy football, and I love him to break out for the Bears.
You look at wide receivers. So we know that Allen Robinson right now is currently having, contract disputes. Before we really dive into the wide receiver group, how confident are you that Allen Robinson and the Bears get a deal worked out by the July 15th deadline?
I'm not very confident, JT. I'm not very confident. And the reason I say that is because it shouldn't take this long. Mm-hmm. It's literally the week of the deadline. And if you have not gotten a deal done right now, it doesn't speak well to you getting a deal done. Now, could they get something done, at the end, like the day of? Sure. But to me, that's like a 5-10% chance. I think what this basically tells you is the number is still far apart. What A-Rob wants and what the Bears want to give him. And again, I see both sides of it because, JT, you got to look at it like this. If I'm A-Rob, I've been playing with bad quarterbacks and I've been producing 2 back-to-back 1,100-plus yard seasons, and I want my money, right? And I'm getting, half of what the top salary guy is getting. But if I'm the Bears, I'm not a contender, and I've got other positions of need, and I don't need to pay a wide receiver all this money when, I don't really necessarily feel like my team is going to be a Super Bowl contender. So I see both sides of it. I personally, as a Bears fan, want to keep A-Rob, but do I feel good about us getting a deal done? I don't, which means I think A-Rob's going to be a free agent next year. I think he's going to be looking to get the bag. Now, I will say this one thing. I don't think Bears fans should lose all hope. If the Bears somehow end up having a good season, we see Justin Fields, he ends up being, the next Justin Herbert, if you will, showing that potential. I think A-Rob and the Bears could find themselves in free agency, getting another deal. But as of right now, to me, I think A-Rob is just chasing this big payday, and he's going to hit free agency.
So it looks like the plan is going to be, okay, they're pretty sold on Darnell Mooney. I don't know if you know this, but there was a Darnell Mooney fan page on IG that was gassing up what he did against Jalen Ramsey, pretty much breaking him in a route. And Jalen Ramsey responded, and I don't think there's nobody more excited week 1 to match up against Darnell Mooney than Jalen Ramsey. So you look at Darnell Mooney, he's your number 2 right now. What about the slot position?
Yeah, that's tough because, Anthony Miller was supposed to be the guy, right? And I feel like Anthony Miller at this point might be closer to getting cut than he is to being the main slot receiver, just because of inconsistencies, dropping the ball, getting hurt. So right now, I don't think there's a clear option. We added a few guys, but those are more deep threats. Marquise Goodwin, Damiere Byrd. These guys are burners over the top. So I think you're going to see a lot of A-Rob playing all over the field. You'll see Mooney, but he's also a deep guy. So there's really not, and that's why I go back to Cole Kmet. I think he's going to be the guy in the middle of the field that's really going to take advantage of, the opening in the middle of the field. So I wouldn't really focus too much on the slot guy because Matt Nagy has emphasized the deep ball. He's tired of the checkdowns. He wants the offense to open up, and that means chucking the ball down the field. That's why they added all these speed receivers. Whether it pans out, we have to see, but that's where we're at.
It's funny. He wants to throw the ball deep, but instead of, getting a Ryan Fitzpatrick, who actually does throw a pretty good deep ball, you get Andy Dalton. Crazy.
It's what to tell you.
And then on top of that, okay, he's taking back play calling duty. So what do you think there's going to be a change? Like, did he learn his lesson? Because you had Lazard who took over the play calling duties. Like, is there going to be something different in this offense?
I think Matt Nagy this year, more so than ever. Again, I'm projecting. Do I think something different is going to happen? Matt Nagy hasn't shown us that he's going to do much different. But if he were to, I think the biggest difference is that he is going to force the quarterback to throw deep. And that's one of the things where I think Justin Fields has a chance to win the starting job or take over as the starting quarterback is if Matt Nagy tries to make Dalton throw deep and he cannot do it consistently, then he will give Justin Fields that chance because that's the biggest advantage Justin Fields has over Andy Dalton. And we brought in all these guys. JT, like, you don't bring a bunch of speed receivers and not use them, all right? We're not going to just run 15 wide receiver screens. I mean, you could do that, but it's not going to be a good game plan.
As a Steelers fan, I saw how that went last year.
Yeah. So we're not trying to be a horizontal offense. We're trying to be vertical offense. They added the speed. That tells me the playbook's going to open up. That tells me Matt Nagy's tired of the checkdowns. We had that with Trubisky and Foles, and we want to open up the offense. So I think that's the biggest difference here. I don't think he's given that back play calling unless the season goes into the tank again. But that last season, I think, was an aberration.
So, I mean, not really the answer I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear Matt Nagy, instead of forcing the ball deep, he was going to be force feeding David Montgomery, because we saw what David Montgomery did the second half of the year. I think was a big reason why Chicago was able to make the run that they did. I mean, David Montgomery was going off the last couple of weeks of last year's 2020 season. So you got Tyreek Cohen back. We know he's more of the third down back, more of the receiving back, return specialist. So, like, is David Montgomery going to have an increased workload this year to the point like he's the focal point of the offense, or is Matt Nagy going to pull a Matt Nagy?
So I got two answers for you on this one. And I'm glad you brought that up where you said, I thought we'd hear about running the football more. I thought so too, JT. But here's the thing, all right? Tariq Cohen's coming back. You said it exactly. He's the space back, the receiving back. And I believe he's going to get majority, if not all, of the receiving work, right? That means we're taking a lot out of David Montgomery's plate in terms of the passing game. Then we also added another guy, Damian Williams. Remember him? Yeah, almost won Super Bowl MVP, all right? And if his name was Patrick Mahomes, he would have, but he didn't, right? And so you have three guys now in the backfield with David Montgomery, including him. And I just feel like Nagy is going to split the touches.
I'm not liking this at all.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm trying to sell myself on it because I love Monty, and I think he's going to be great, and I could be wrong. But you invested in Tariq Cohen by giving him a contract extension. Remember that before he got hurt, he got a contract extension. And then you bring in Damian Williams. That tells me you want to ease the workload of Monty a little bit, take away his receiving chops. And that tells me that you're going to see a lot of Tariq Cohen and a lot of Damian Williams.
Yeah, because Damian Williams is a really good back when it comes to the passing game. And that is something that I had about David Montgomery coming out of Iowa State was like, he was this good downfield runner. He can do everything besides catch the ball. So, kind of disappointing because I was looking for, some running backs that weren't going to be in committees this year. But it sounds like David Montgomery's going to be in one.
Again, I'll tell you this much, too. This was the second thing I wanted to tell you, JT, real quick, was Tariq Cohen's injury that he's coming back from that ACL, apparently he's not fully 100%. So there is a chance that early on in the season, Monty could still get the majority of the workload. Damian Williams still has to learn the playbook. Obviously, he'll have his opportunity. But if Tariq is eased in, Monty's still going to get a bunch of touches. I'm just saying for the entirety of the 17-game season now, Monty's workload won't be as strong as it was last year.
Yeah, man. I'm kind of disappointed because, like, if I'm Matt Nagy and I want to throw the ball downfield, I think the best way to do that would be giving David Montgomery more touches last year, getting the running game going. You get play action, then you get some easy downfield throws. But I mean, who are we? We're fans and he's the head coach. So I mean, hey, his job's on the hot seat. So I mean,
yeah. No, I agree with you. Like I said, it could still happen, right? They could still feed Monty, and I hope they do. I still think he's good for 15, maybe 20 touches a game. I just think that as the season goes on, they'll integrate Tariq more and Damian Williams more.
Yeah. So before we get to the defense, let the people know where they can find you at.
Yeah, man. Follow me on my social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter at faizsportstalk, and then on YouTube as well. So talk a lot of Bears football on there, and that's the place to find me.
I've been telling a lot of people out there who like Bears fans who've been saying that they were going to make it to the playoffs, but I've been saying, okay, you have some concerns when it comes to the offensive line. Matt Nagy's play calling has been an issue, and you just can't rely on that defense because, like, a lot of Bears fans keep telling me, like, the defense, we got a great defense, but I'm like, your defense ever since you went to the playoffs in Matt Nagy's first year has gotten worse. And a lot of Bears fans don't even give Matt Nagy a lot of credit for that. They really give Vic Fangio a lot of credit for it. So, I mean, like, you lose Kyle Fuller, big loss. So how do you feel about the whole Kyle Fuller thing? Like, they said they wanted to get some compensation for him, and instead you just let him walk for free. And I don't even think they freed on no cap space. Like, didn't they take a cap hit for that?
So just speaking on the Kyle Fuller situation, how I felt about it, Ryan Pace had a fantastic offseason with one mistake, the Kyle Fuller transaction. He had a fantastic offseason.
Good draft.
Quarterback of the future. Great draft, free agency addressed the needs, messed up on Kyle Fuller. You could have cleared money out elsewhere. You could have cut Jimmy Graham. I was over here saying cut Jimmy Graham. I don't want him. Get rid of him. But they cut Kyle Fuller, and I thought that was a big mistake. It leaves a big hole in the secondary. Now we have Jalen Johnson, who was a rookie cornerback last year. I think he's going to be the number one cornerback, which is crazy to think about in his second year. But behind him, you got barely anything, right?
Desmond Trufant. I mean,
Trufant. Yeah, this isn't the Atlanta Falcons Desmond Trufant. I'm sorry. You have Artie Burns. You have guys like that, and you have a Thomas Drama quarterback we did draft this year. I'm excited about him, but a lot of inexperience. So the back end, I'm not excited about, and I was not happy at all about the Kyle Fuller situation.
So when it comes to corner, I mean, Jalen Johnson, to me, was probably the second best rookie cornerback from last year's draft class. If we did a redraft, Detroit, if they would have known how good the cornerbacks would have been ahead of time, they probably would have taken Trayvon Diggs, and Jalen Johnson probably would have came second off the board. And he went in the second round. So both of those guys went in the second round and played really good. So I definitely think Jalen Johnson could be in for a breakout year. Like, I find it crazy. He reminds me a lot of Kyle Fuller his first couple of years because Jalen Johnson had all these pass deflections. He could have had more interceptions, but he wasn't able to hold on to the ball. And, similar thing was said about Kyle Fuller. But, I mean, Desmond Trufant, is he going to be your cornerback number 2 or, who's going to be playing slot?
Yeah, I think you're probably going to see Desmond Trufant as a number 2 cornerback, which is kind of sad. But like I said, I think they're high on Thomas Graham, the kid that they drafted this year.
Out of Oregon.
I think Artie Burns was out last year due to COVID. I think he opted out, so he's coming back. And, there's other guys as well, but obviously not as much experience. Like I said, I think that's the biggest hole that the Bears have in the secondary at the cornerback spot. So that's going to be something where opposing quarterbacks are going to keep picking on the Bears' second cornerback. I was hoping they could continue to address it in free agency. There was talk about maybe a Richard Sherman, but I don't think he wants to go to a team that isn't a contender. But yeah, that's definitely a weakness. And like I said, it's the one mark on Ryan Pace's pretty flawless offseason.
Interesting about Artie Burns because, like, when you guys signed him a year ago, Steeler Nation saw an article that said he possibly could be moving to safety. I thought that was pretty interesting. A lot of Steeler fans wanted him to move to safety before we let him go. But let's talk about the pass rush because, like, I was arguing with one person on the other day ago, my guy Juice Alert. He was trying to tell me the Bears got a great pass rush, and I was like, not really. They were 18th in sacks per game. So you got Khalil Mack, you got Hakeem Hicks. But I mean, who else? Because you guys have lost a lot over the last couple of years.
Yeah, Robert Quinn.
Yep.
We did a lot of
10 sacks with the Rams last year.
Yeah. So Robert Quinn was a disappointment last year. All right. We gave up on Leonard Floyd, and he did what Robert Quinn was supposed to do with the Rams. And that part really pissed off a lot of Bears fans, including myself. Now, as far as your question, how do I feel about the pass rush? I feel decent. I don't feel incredible, but I feel solid. Like, I do think it's a position where we're good, right? You mentioned Khalil Mack. You mentioned Akeem Hicks. We're going to get Eddie Goldman back. That's going to be a big addition. So the D-line is solid, and I think it's, one of the positions on the team that I'm not as worried about. Like, let me just tell you, JT, like, the D-line does not make me stay up at night. How about that? I'm okay with it.
Okay, so are we going to have a pass rush that was like 18th in sacks per game, or is that expected to improve?
So let me tell you this. I think that all depends on the offense. If you're going to leave the defense out as much on the field as we did last season, they're going to get gassed. They're not going to be able to get to the quarterback. And we saw that a lot last year. Like, people feel like, oh, why don't we talk about Khalil Mack as much, right? Like, I feel like he's become underrated at this point. It's because he still gets double teamed all the damn time, right? He still has to deal with that. And even if his numbers are suffering, that's because he's on the field so much. So it's really going to depend on if the offense is able to hold up their end of the bargain. If we go in, we're a bottom 10 offense again, it's not going to be good for the D-line because of how much they have to be out there. I do think Back is going to to your question, I think we're going to be better than last year. How much better? I wouldn't say significantly. I'm not going to say top 5, but I think we will be better.
So when you look at linebacker, you got Roquan Smith and who else? Because Roquan Smith should have made it to the Pro Bowl last year.
He should have. I think he got snubbed. I don't know how Roquan didn't make it to the Pro Bowl. I mean, that to me this year, I mean, should be an absolute shoo-in. But to me, like I said, the defense overall, I think they'll be solid. I don't think they'll be like elite or anything like that. I definitely think, the Steelers defense is good.
Washington,
49ers, right? So as far as, Roquan Smith, yeah, he's definitely the best guy we have. There's guys that we signed this offseason. I always have trouble pronouncing his name from the Broncos. Jeremiah Atuchua, I think that's what his name is.
Jeremiah Tachu.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, so we signed him. I think he's decent. Charles Snowden, another guy that we signed. Christian Jones. We have Danny Trevathan. So, again, some experience, some inexperience there. It's a mixed bag. But to me, I still think the back end is the weakness here. So, as far as the linebacker group, if Roquan goes down, I'm worrying because there's nobody behind him. But as long as Roquan's there, I feel solid.
Now, safety, you're pretty set. You got Deion Bush. Didn't he recently just sign a new contract?
Yeah, Eddie Jackson, Deion Bush, yep.
Yeah, so, Eddie Jackson, we already know one of the best in the game.
Trayvon Gibson was a positive surprise for us last year.
Okay, so, you're pretty confident about safety.
Excuse me, yeah, Tayshaun Gibson, yeah.
So you're pretty confident about the depth at safety.
I'm pretty confident about the safety position because, like I said, A. Jackson's a stud, and then Tayshaun Gibson last year was one of the best free agent signings that we had, right? I'm not saying in general, but the Bears had where, he did his job. Was he incredible, elite? No, but he did his job. Then that's all you can ask for at that point with a one-year deal. So I like him. I think we're fine. So safety-wise, I do feel pretty good.
All right. So before we let you go, what are the 5 players that you're going to watch overall? Not 5 players on offense, 5 players on defense. Overall, who are your 5 players that you're going to be watching during training camp?
All right, so this is tough. So I mentioned the offensive line, so I'm going to be watching our 5th round rookie offensive lineman, Larry Borum, because I'm curious if he's going to get one of the starting jobs, if he's good enough to win it. I'm going to be watching him for sure. Obviously, I think Justin Fields is an easy answer. It might be a cop out, but I do think there's a chance that Justin Fields wins the starting job if he does what I said, which is shows that he can throw the ball deep, which Andy Dalton can do, and he shows that he has a good command of the playbook. Because keep this in mind, JT, Andy Dalton is not the Alex Smith here where he's been in the system for years. He's learning the system just as much as Justin Fields is. So if Justin Fields picks up the playbook quicker, he has a chance to start. So
So
obviously I'm watching.
it's like a Matt Flynn, Russell Wilson situation.
Exactly. It's exactly like that. And that's how Justin Fields wins the job. He plays so well that he forces Nagy to start him. Nagy's gonna be like Pete Carroll. He's gonna be like, I got no choice but to start this kid, right? We just gave a fat contract to Matt Flynn, like the Bears did with Andy Dalton, but you got to start him. So I hope that happens. Justin Fields is watching him, watching the offensive lineman. Cole Kmet's another guy. He's been at that tight end camp with all the top tight ends. Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and those guys. So hopefully some of that rubs off on Cole Kmet. I'm waiting to see how Tariq Cohen looks. I told you about the reports. They said he's slowly recovering, still not 100% from that ACL tear. Look, Tariq Cohen changes a lot about the offense. I know fantasy football-wise we don't want to hear it, but Tariq Cohen opens up the offense a lot. You can't cover this man. Like, he is very, very hard to tackle. So we missed him a lot last year. So I like him a lot, and I think I'm going to be watching him as well. And then another guy that I'm going to give you, JT, to look out for, and only because if A-Rob leaves next year, we need another guy, is Daz Newsome, wide receiver that the Bears drafted this year. He's got some good talent, and there's a chance. I'm not saying it's going to happen. There's a chance it takes maybe one injury. I think he can get some solid playing time. Right now, he's, I think, 4th on the depth chart behind A-Rob, Mooney, Goodwin, and probably Damiere Byrd. I'm thinking Anthony Miller's in the doghouse. That's why I didn't mention him. But if he can get if somebody gets hurt, he can leapfrog a guy. Look out. I think he's got some talent.
All right, everybody. So before we let you go, I want to say I appreciate you for coming on and let the people know one more time where they can find you at and what you have coming up on the channel over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, JT. It's been a pleasure. Again, guys, find me at Five Sports Talk on YouTube and on my social media. It's the same handle. And listen, I have a ton of stuff just like JT's putting out. We got training camp coming up, and then obviously we're going to have preseason, and now finally a regular offseason that we didn't have last year. So a ton to look forward to. So look out for that and follow me.
And you guys make sure to check out my guy, Fall Sports Talk. I will have his YouTube channel linked down in the comment section down below. Make sure to subscribe to him. And also make sure to subscribe to me as well. Make sure that you guys turn on post notifications so you don't miss a new video. And I appreciate you guys for watching.